The night on Haleth Prime was always restless. The storms came from the southern sea and rolled across the ruined districts like ghosts that refused to sleep. Winds howled through broken towers, rattling steel beams and broken glass. For most people in the refugee quarter, night meant fear. The Vadran raiders often came under the cover of darkness when the skies were loud with thunder, and it was easy to hide the sound of their engines. Jace was used to nights like this. He had grown up with them. He had never known Earth. He had never seen a quiet sky full of calm stars. His world was Haleth Prime, a place where survival was not promised, and every day felt like a gift stolen from death itself. That night, Jace had been running errands for the old mechanic who sometimes gave him food in exchange for scrap. He was only 15, skinny, with dark hair that curled into his eyes when the rain plastered it to his forehead. His clothes were patched and too big for him, but they kept him warm enough. He was used to wandering the alleys, dodging patrols, and finding ways to survive. But this night was different. As he crossed a narrow street, lightning flashed across the sky, and in that white burst of light he saw a figure lying in the gutter. At first he thought it was another refugee, maybe someone who hadn't made it back to shelter before the storm. He almost kept walking. People collapsed all the time, and helping them was often dangerous. But something in the way the figure stirred, a weak movement, a soft sound carried by the wind, made him stop. Jace approached carefully. His heart beat fast. He knew the risks of stopping in the open. The Vadran could sweep the area at any moment. But when he got closer, he saw it wasn't a human at all. It was a girl. Her skin was pale with a faint silver hue, and faint lines of glowing blue traced down her arms like living tattoos. Her hair, tangled and wet from the storm, was the color of starlight. Jace froze. He had heard stories about the Lyrans, a people who lived among the stars with logic and technology far beyond humans. They rarely spoke to refugees. They looked down on humans, many said, seeing them as reckless, weak, and emotional. Yet here she was, one of them, lying in the mud of the refugee quarter, injured and alone. Jace crouched down. "Hey," he whispered, not even sure if she understood human speech. "Are you alive?" The girl's eyes flickered open. They glowed faintly silver and sharp, yet filled with exhaustion. She tried to push herself up but collapsed again, gripping her side where a thin line of blood seeped through her clothing. "Leave me," she muttered, her voice weak but clear. Her accent was strange, precise, but Jace understood. "Not safe. Here." Jace looked around. She was right. The streets were too open. Searchlights could sweep by at any time. He could already hear distant engines rumbling through the storm. If he left her here, she wouldn't last an hour. Something inside him refused to walk away. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way her hand trembled as she tried to rise, or the way her voice cracked with pain. Maybe it was simply because she looked like she shouldn't belong in the dirt, like someone had thrown a piece of the stars into the gutter. "I'm not leaving you," Jace said firmly. He pulled her arm over his shoulder. She was taller than him, older too, maybe 17 or 18, but light as if her bones weighed less than human bones. She tried to resist, muttering something about logic and futility, but she was too weak. Jace carried her step by step into the shadows of a broken building. The shelter was an old storage depot, half collapsed with one wall missing and the roof sagging. But it had corners dark enough to hide in, and Jace had used it before when raids grew too close. He laid the girl down on a pile of old cloth and searched for something to stop her bleeding. "Don't waste time," she said, her voice sharper now, though still faint. "You should hide yourself." "The Vadran hunt tonight." "I know," Jace replied, tearing a strip from his own shirt and pressing it against her wound. "But I'm not going to let you die." Her silver eyes studied him in the dim light. "Why, you don't even know me." "Because you're alive," Jace said simply. "And alive things deserve a chance." For a moment silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of the storm outside. The girl seemed confused by his answer, as if it did not fit into the way she understood the world. Hours passed slowly. Jace stayed awake listening for the hum of engines and the heavy steps of armored patrols. The girl drifted in and out of sleep. Once she whispered her name, Kayla. She said it quickly, almost unwilling to give it, but Jace remembered. When thunder shook the depot, Kayla stirred and spoke again. "You are human." "From the refugee quarter." "Yeah," Jace said. "My people, they say humans are reckless. They act without reason. always emotional, always desperate. Jace gave a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. Sounds about right. Then why? She asked again, her voice softer now. Why carry me? Why not leave me in the street? Jace thought for a moment. He could have said many things. That he pitied her. That he didn't want more death on his conscience. That maybe she could help him later if she lived. But none of that felt true. Because, he said finally, if I was the one bleeding in the street, I'd hope someone would carry me too. Kayla looked away, as if the answer unsettled her more than satisfied her. The night dragged on. Outside, the Vedran swept through the district. Searchlights flashed through cracks in the walls. Once footsteps came so close, Jace had to press a hand over Kayla's mouth to keep her from gasping. His own heart pounded so loudly he was sure the soldiers could hear it. But the patrol moved on, their engines fading into the storm. When danger passed, Kayla whispered, "You risked death for me. That is not logical." "Maybe not," Jace said. "But sometimes you have to do what feels right, not what makes sense." She shook her head slightly as if she could not understand. Yet her eyes lingered on him longer than before, curious, uncertain. As midnight turned toward morning, Kayla grew stronger. She could sit up, though her side still hurt. Jace kept watch by the entrance, a broken metal pipe in his hands as a makeshift weapon. He knew it was useless against Vedran armor, but it made him feel less helpless. He thought about how strange the night had become. Only hours ago he was just another boy trying to survive. Now he was hiding with a Lyran girl, protecting her as if his life depended on it. Maybe it did. And somewhere deep inside, Jace felt that this night was more than chance. Something about Kayla's presence, about the way their fates had collided in the storm, made him believe that the world would never be the same again. The night was not over. Engines still roared in the distance. The Vedran still hunted. But in that fragile moment, as Kayla leaned against the wall and Jace kept his tired eyes open, the boy made a silent promise. He would hold on. He would not let her go. Not until the morning broke. The storm had not passed by morning. It rolled across Haleth Prime like a beast that refused to sleep, rumbling with thunder and spilling endless rain. The world outside was gray, broken, and wet. The refugee quarter was silent except for the sound of dripping water and the far-off hum of Vedran machines. Jace sat with his back against the wall of the ruined depot, his pipe still in hand, though his arms felt heavy. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined the searchlight sweeping in, the Vedran breaking through the broken walls, Kayla being taken or killed. He had promised himself he would keep her safe until morning. Morning had come, but safety had not. Kayla stirred on the pile of cloth where she rested. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the dim light that leaked through cracks in the roof. Her wound still hurt, but she looked stronger than she had in the night. "You did not sleep," she said softly, her voice still carrying that precise, careful tone. Jace shrugged. "Didn't feel like it. You watched the whole night?" "Someone had to," he replied. "The Vedran don't rest." Kayla pushed herself up, leaning against the wall. She studied him for a moment, her silver eyes sharp. "Humans are strange. You risked yourself for me when there was no reason, and now you sit awake all night as if your body does not demand rest." "I'm used to it," Jace said. He looked down at the muddy floor. "Out here, if you want to live, you learn to keep your eyes open. Sleep when it's safe. Sometimes that means not sleeping at all." Kayla tilted her head slightly, as if storing his answer away like a puzzle she could not yet solve. The sound of engines grew louder again, pulling both their attention to the street outside. Shadows of large shapes moved past the cracks in the wall. Jace's body went tense. He held up a finger to Kayla, signaling silence. She obeyed, though her hand reached instinctively toward her side, where a weapon might have been if she still carried one. The Vedran patrol stopped just outside the depot. Jace's breath caught in his throat. He could hear their deep mechanical voices speaking in a language he could not understand. The heavy crunch of armored boots pressed against wet ground. One of them stepped close, so close that the shadow fell across the hole in the wall. Kayla reached out, her hand gripping Jace's wrist. For the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. It wasn't fear of death. Her kind were trained for war, he was sure, but fear of helplessness. They waited. Seconds stretched like hours. Rain pattered on the roof. Lightning flashed. The Vedran finally moved on, their engines rumbling as they left the street. Jace let out a slow breath. Kayla released his wrist, but not before he noticed how cold her hand had felt against his skin. "You see?" he whispered. "This is why we can't move yet. Too many patrols." Kayla nodded reluctantly. "You are right. But if we stay too long, they will sweep again." "Then we'll move when it's dark again," Jace said. "They expect people to run during the day. At night, we have better chances." Kayla did not argue, but he could tell she disliked the idea of waiting. Hours crawled by. The depot was damp and cold. Jace tried to patch Kayla's wound again with what little cloth he had left. She allowed it, though her eyes stayed on him the whole time as if measuring every action. "Does it hurt much?" Jace asked quietly. Kayla shook her head. "Pain is not important. It feels important to me," he said. That made her pause. She looked at him strangely, as if he had said something she had never considered before. "Your kind gives too much weight to feelings," she murmured. "Pain, fear, hope. You let them control you. My people are taught to rise above such things." Jace tightened the cloth around her wound. "Maybe that's why your people end up lying in the street and mine keep dragging forward." Kayla blinked, taken aback. Then, to Jace's surprise, a small smile touched her lips. It was faint, almost invisible, but it softened her sharp features. "You speak boldly for someone so young," she said. "Yeah, well," Jace muttered, sitting back. "If I don't, who will?" By late afternoon, the rain slowed, leaving the streets covered in puddles. The storm clouds thinned, letting shafts of pale sunlight through, but the quarter did not look brighter. The ruins, the broken towers, the empty streets, all of it felt heavier under the weak light. Kayla tried to stand. She pushed herself up, steadying against the wall. Jace moved to stop her, but she held up a hand. "I need to move," she said. "If I stay weak, I will be a burden. I must walk." "You'll open the wound again," Jace warned. "I must." She took one step, then another. Her legs shook, but she did not fall. Jace watched closely, ready to catch her. Finally, after a few moments, she sat back down, her breath heavy but her eyes proud. "You're stubborn," Jace said. "I have been called worse." He almost laughed at that, though he kept it inside. As night approached again, Jace prepared to move. He checked the streets from the shadows, listening for engines. The storm had returned, covering the city in darkness once more. "We go now," he whispered to Kayla. "Where?" she asked. "There's a tunnel system under the quarter. Old supply lines. If we can reach them, we can hide deeper. Maybe find the resistance. Resistance? Humans who fight back. Not many, but enough to make the Vedran nervous sometimes." Kayla's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Perhaps your kind is not as broken as I was told." Jace didn't answer. He just held out a hand to help her up.
She hesitated, then took it.
Her fingers were still cold, but her grip was stronger now. They moved through the ruins like shadows. Jace led the way, Kayla close behind. Every step was slow, careful, timed with the thunder so their sounds were hidden. Twice they had to stop and press against the walls as searchlights swept past. At one point they ducked into an alley when two Vedran soldiers passed by, their armor gleaming under the rain. Jace held his breath. Kayla pressed against the wall beside him, her shoulder brushing his. He could feel her heartbeat quick against his arm. For someone who spoke so much about logic, she looked very human in her fear. When the patrol was gone, Jace looked at her. She avoided his gaze, but her hand lingered close to his for a moment before she pulled it back. They reached the entrance to the tunnels just before midnight. A metal grate covered the opening, half buried in rubble. Jace pulled at it with all his strength, the rusted bars groaning until they broke free. "Quick," he whispered, motioning Kayla through. She slipped inside first, moving with surprising grace despite her wound. Jace followed, pulling the grate back as best as he could. Inside, the tunnel was dark and damp, but safe. At least safer than the streets above. They walked a little further, the sound of dripping water echoing around them. Finally, when they were sure no one had followed, they sat down against the wall. Kayla looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You carried me from the street. You stayed awake to guard me, and now you risked yourself again to bring me here." Jace shrugged, trying to act casual, though his body was aching from exhaustion. "Like I said, alive things deserve a chance." She studied him in silence. Then she asked very quietly, "And what about you? Do you believe you deserve a chance?" Jace froze. No one had ever asked him that before. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Finally, he looked away. "Doesn't matter. I'll take one if I can." For a long time, Kayla said nothing. Then, almost too soft to hear, she whispered, "Perhaps your people's weakness is also your strength." The storm raged on above, but in the darkness of the tunnels, something had shifted. The distance between a human boy and a Lyran girl had grown smaller. Neither trusted the night. Neither trusted fate, but for now they trusted each other. And as the echo of thunder rolled through the tunnels, Jace knew one thing for certain. He would not let go. Not until morning broke. The tunnels stretched deep beneath the ruined quarter, winding like veins under the broken city. The air was damp and heavy with the smell of rust and old water. Drops fell from the ceiling in slow rhythm, echoing down the passageways. For Jace, the darkness was both a comfort and a warning. It hid them from the Vadran above, but it also held dangers of its own. Kayla walked beside him, her steps careful. The glow from the faint blue lines along her skin gave off a soft light, just enough for them to see each other in the shadows. Jace had never seen anything like it. It was beautiful, like starlight trapped beneath her skin. "Does it hurt?" he asked quietly, nodding toward her side where the wound still lay hidden under the cloth. "No," Kayla replied, though her voice carried a hint of strain. "It will heal. My kind recover faster than humans." "That's good," Jace said, though he wasn't sure he believed her. He had seen the way she sometimes winced when she moved too quickly. Still, he didn't press her further. They walked for what felt like hours. The storm above rumbled faintly, its sound muted by the layers of earth and metal between them and the surface. Jace led the way through the maze of tunnels, following paths he had explored before. He had used these passages many times to escape raids or to search for hidden caches of food and supplies, but never had he traveled them with someone like Kayla. Finally, they stopped in a wider chamber where the walls had collapsed, creating a space large enough to rest. Jace lowered himself to the ground, his legs aching from exhaustion. Kayla sat as well, her movements graceful despite her wound. "Why do you know these tunnels?" Kayla asked, her silver eyes glinting in the dim glow. Jace shrugged. "When you live here, you learn where you can hide. You learn how to run. If you don't live long." Kayla considered his words. "My people. We study maps, histories, patterns. We build knowledge to avoid mistakes, but you survive by moving through the unknown." "Guess that's the difference," Jace said. "You plan. We adapt." Kayla tilted her head as though she were weighing the truth in his answer. Silence filled the chamber for a while. Jace leaned his head against the wall, listening to the drip of water. His eyes grew heavy, but he forced them open. He couldn't fall asleep yet. Kayla noticed. "You are tired," she said. "I'll be fine. You need to rest. I will watch." Jace almost laughed at that. "You can barely stand sometimes. If anything comes, I'll need to fight." Kayla frowned slightly, though her expression softened quickly. "You do not trust me to protect you?" "It's not that," Jace said. "It's just, you're hurt. I'm not." She studied him, and for a moment he thought she might argue. But then she nodded, letting the matter go. They continued deeper the next day. Jace knew the tunnels eventually connected to a resistance hideout, though he had never dared go that far before. He thought maybe, just maybe, they could find safety there, but as they moved, they began to hear sounds echoing down the tunnels, metallic thuds, distorted voices, the hum of machines. Jace froze. "The Vadran," he whispered. Kayla narrowed her eyes, listening. "They follow." Jace's stomach sank. The tunnels that had felt like shelter now felt like a trap. If the Vadran had entered, there would be no easy way out. He grabbed Kayla's hand without thinking. "Come on." They moved quickly, their footsteps splashing in shallow puddles. The echoes grew louder. Jace led them through narrow side passages, twisting and turning, hoping the enemy would lose their trail. But then the glow of lights appeared behind them. Cold, harsh beams cutting through the dark. "They are close," Kayla said. Her voice low. "I know," Jace answered, his heart pounding. They reached another chamber, but this one had no exit on the other side. The walls had collapsed, blocking the way. Jace turned, panic rising as the lights approached. Kayla stood tall beside him, her silver eyes burning with determination. She raised her hand and faint energy sparked along her glowing lines. Jace realized she had some strength left, though her wound still slowed her. "Stay behind me," she said firmly. But Jace shook his head. He stepped forward, gripping his pipe tightly. His hands trembled, but he did not back away. "I'm not leaving you to fight alone," he said. The Vadran emerged from the tunnel, their armored forms towering in the glow. Their weapons gleamed, their voices metallic and cruel. Jace felt the weight of hopelessness press against him, but he forced his feet to stay planted. Kayla unleashed a surge of energy, a blast of light that struck the first soldier and sent him stumbling back. But there were too many. Their weapons rose, glowing with deadly power. Jace shouted and swung his pipe at the closest one. The blow barely dented the armor, but it distracted the soldier long enough for Kayla to strike again. Sparks filled the chamber, echoing with thunderous noise. But for every enemy they slowed, two more advanced. Jace's arms ached, his breath came in gasps. He knew he couldn't win. Still, he refused to stop. He thought of the promise he made that night in the depot, to hold on, to not let go until morning. Even now, facing death, he clung to that resolve. His body screamed at him to run, to hide, but he stayed. "I won't let you take her," he shouted, his voice echoing through the tunnel. The words burned with such raw emotion that even Kayla turned to stare at him. And in that moment, something strange happened. Kayla's glowing lines flared brighter, as if they fed on Jace's determination. She gasped, feeling a surge of energy unlike anything she had known. Her people's telepathic abilities had always been controlled, precise, logical. But now, connected to Jace's raw willpower, the energy became something fierce, something alive. She closed her eyes, and her mind reached out, not just to the Vedran, but to the very air around them. Jace's determination pulsed through her like fire. The chamber shook with unseen force. The Vedran staggered, their weapons lowering as confusion spread through them. Their voices broke into static, their movements faltered. Jace didn't understand what was happening, but he felt it too. A strength that wasn't his, yet was born from him, surged in the air. He looked at Kayla, her figure blazing with light, and for the first time he believed they might survive. The energy burst outward, a wave that sent the Vedran reeling. Some fell, others retreated, their systems disrupted by the strange force. The tunnel filled with echoes of their retreating steps. When it was over, Kayla collapsed to her knees, the glow fading from her skin. Jace rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. "Kayla! Hey, stay with me!" Her breathing was heavy, but her eyes opened slowly. She looked at him with a mixture of exhaustion and awe. Your will, it connected," she whispered. "I have never felt such strength." Jace shook his head, confused. "I didn't do anything." "You did," she insisted. "You refused to give up. You held on even when there was no hope. That fire, it gave me power." Jace swallowed hard. He didn't know what to say. All he had done was stand his ground, refuse to leave her. But somehow, that had changed everything. They rested in the quiet that followed, the storm above, faint now compared to the storm inside Jace's chest. He looked at Kayla, realizing that she was no longer just a stranger he had saved. She was something more. Someone bound to him by the strange force they had shared. Kayla met his gaze, her silver eyes soft. "Perhaps your people's weakness is also your greatest strength," she said again. But this time there was no doubt in her voice. Jace managed a tired smile. "Guess we'll find out." And deep in the tunnels, with danger still all around them, a human boy and a Lyran girl found something neither of them expected: hope. The tunnels grew quieter after the Vedran retreated. Only the steady drip of water and the faint hum of distant machines remained. Jace leaned against the wall, still holding Kayla as she tried to steady her breath. Her glow had faded, but the memory of that moment, when light had filled the chamber, when his stubborn resolve had somehow become her strength, lingered like fire in his chest. "You should rest," Jace whispered. Kayla shook her head slowly. "We cannot stay here. They will return. They will bring more." Jace frowned. She was right. The Vedran never gave up so easily. If they had been forced back, they would regroup, analyze what happened, and come stronger. He thought of the resistance hideout somewhere deeper in the tunnels. "It was their only chance, then we move," Jace said firmly. "Can you walk?" Kayla met his eyes. Her body was weak, but her gaze was steady. "If you walk, I will walk," Jace smiled faintly. "Good enough." They continued through the tunnels, their footsteps soft against the wet stone. Jace led carefully, choosing paths that twisted and turned, trying to keep them unpredictable. His mind replayed the fight over and over. He had swung a pipe against armored soldiers like it mattered. It hadn't been the weapon that changed anything. It had been his refusal to let go. Somehow that had given Kayla the strength to unleash something powerful, something that had saved them both. He wanted to ask her about it, but she walked in silence, her thoughts hidden behind her calm face. At last she spoke. "Do you realize what you did?" Jace glanced at her. "I didn't do much. You did more than you know," Kayla said. "The Lyran mind is trained to control, to calculate. But when I reached for strength, it was not logic that answered. It was you, your will, your fire. It connected with me. I have never felt anything like it." Jace looked down at the muddy floor. "I just didn't want to lose you." Kayla's steps slowed. She looked at him with surprise, then something softer, something she seemed almost afraid to show. She said nothing more, but the silence between them was no longer cold. The tunnels narrowed ahead, forcing them into single file. Jace went first, holding the pipe tightly, listening for danger. They passed broken pipes, rusted beams, and once the skeleton of some long-dead creature, its bones glowing faintly with mold. Kayla stayed close behind, her faint light guiding their way. Finally, they reached a sealed door marked with faded human symbols. Jace's heart lifted. He recognized it, an old resistance checkpoint. He knocked 3 times in rhythm. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then the door cracked open and a face appeared, scarred and wary. "Who are you?" the man demanded. "Jace," he said quickly, from the quarter. "I brought someone. She's hurt. Please. We need help." The man's eyes narrowed as they fell on Kayla. His hand twitched toward a weapon. "That's no human." "She's not Vedran," Jace said firmly. "She's with me. She saved me." The silence stretched. Then another voice inside muttered, "Open it, quickly." The door slid aside and Jace pulled Kayla through. Inside, the hideout was dim but alive. Humans of all ages moved about, repairing weapons, sorting supplies, tending to the wounded. The air smelled of oil and smoke, but it was warm, alive. For the first time in days, Jace felt a flicker of safety. Kayla drew stares wherever she walked. Whispers rose around them, some fearful, some angry. A few looked at Jace with disbelief, as if he had brought danger into their last refuge. One of the leaders, a tall woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Boy, what have you done?" Jace stood straighter, though his legs trembled with exhaustion. "I saved her. She's not our enemy. She fought the Vedran with me. Without her, I'd be dead." The woman studied Kayla, who met her gaze without fear. Finally, she nodded once. "Very well. She stays. But if she turns, it's on you." Jace let out a slow breath. That was enough. They gave Kayla a place to rest, cleaned her wound properly, and offered her food. She accepted politely, though her pride kept her from showing weakness. Jace stayed close, making sure no one gave her trouble. As the hours passed, Jace began to hear plans whispered among the resistance. The Vedran were tightening their grip, sending more troops into the quarter. A large strike was expected soon, one that could wipe out the remaining humans if they were not ready. Jace listened quietly, fear building in his chest. He knew what that meant. If the Vedran found the hideout, there would be no escape. That night, as the others prepared their weapons, Jace sat beside Kayla. She looked better now, her color returning, her glow stronger. "They're planning to fight," Jace said softly. Kayla nodded. "The Vedran will not stop. If your people do not resist, you will be erased." "Yeah," Jace murmured. "But there aren't enough of us." Kayla turned to him, her expression serious. "There is more strength in your people than you believe. I felt it through you. That fire, it spreads. If humans stand together, even the Vedran will feel it." Jace frowned. "You think we can win?" Kayla's silver eyes glowed faintly. "If you fight as you held me that night, without letting go, without surrender, then yes, you can win." The attack came before dawn. The tunnels shook with the thunder of explosions. Alarms rang. Shouts filled the hideout as resistance fighters grabbed weapons and prepared to hold the line. Jace's heart pounded. This was it, the moment when everything would either break or endure. Kayla rose to her feet, standing tall despite her wound. "I will fight with you," she said. Jace grabbed her arm. "You're still weak. I am stronger than you think," she interrupted, her voice steady. "And I am not alone. Not anymore." Jace looked into her eyes and saw the truth there. She wasn't talking only about her own strength. She was talking about his, about the strange bond that had formed between them. He nodded slowly. "Then we fight." The battle in the tunnels was chaos. The Vedran stormed through with heavy armor, their weapons tearing through walls and stone. The resistance fought back with whatever they had, old rifles, explosives, even knives. The air filled with smoke and screams. Jace fought at Kayla's side, swinging his pipe with desperate fury. Every time he thought he would fall, Kayla was there, her energy glowing brighter. And every time she faltered, Jace's stubborn resolve flared, feeding her strength once again. The bond between them grew stronger with each moment. Kayla's telepathic energy amplified Jace's will, sending waves of defiance through the resistance fighters. They felt it too, the fire that refused to die. It spread from one human to another, lifting them even as the walls shook around them. The Vedran, so certain of their dominance, began to falter. Confusion spread in their ranks. Their precision wavered. For the first time, they felt resistance not only in weapons but in spirit. Hours passed like years. The fighting raged until the first light of dawn pierced the cracks in the ceiling above. The Vedran, battered and disoriented, finally began to retreat, pulling their forces back to the surface. The tunnels echoed with their withdrawal, leaving behind silence broken only by heavy breathing and cries of the wounded. Jace collapsed against the wall, his chest heaving. He was covered in sweat and grime, his arms aching so badly he could barely hold his pipe, but he was alive. Kayla stood nearby, her glow dim but steady. She looked at him with quiet pride. "You did not let go," she said softly. Jace met her eyes, exhaustion and relief flooding through him. "Neither did you." When the dust settled, the resistance gathered in the main chamber. They had lost people, but they had held the line. And in the center of it all stood Jace and Kayla side by side. The leader of the resistance looked at them, her sharp eyes softened by something like respect. "You gave them strength," she said. "They fought harder because of you. Because of what you carried," Jace shook his head. "It wasn't me. It was all of us," Kayla stepped forward. "It was him," she said firmly. "Your kind has something my people never understood. A will that burns even when logic says there is no chance. That is why you survive. That is why you will win." The room fell silent, and in that silence hope grew. As dawn spread across the broken city above, Jace stepped outside with Kayla at his side. The sky was still scarred with storm clouds, but for the first time sunlight broke through, painting the ruins in pale gold. Kayla looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the light. "You held me until morning broke," she said softly. "And now? Perhaps morning has broken for your people as well." Jace smiled, tired but certain. "Then let's make sure it lasts." And together, they walked into the new day. Two lives bound by a night of fear, a bond of fire and a promise that humanity's strength, born from its heart, would never be forgotten.